everyone, Devin here, and in this episode we're going to be looking at Tails OS, a Linux distribution. Now, before we get to that though, I'd like to kind of go over some news, some things that have been kind of bothering me. Has been some hacks kind of in the open source community lately. And I mean, for me, looking at Tails OS, which has completely to do with privacy and security and all that great stuff, I think it's interesting that we kind of look at some scenarios where open source wasn't as secure as we were kind of hoping. Let me pull over this. So you guys probably heard about this. Linux Mint, the ISOs got replaced. Therefore, people got some malicious ISOs when they were intending to get Linux Mint. Now, this article over here at the Hacker News seems to cover pretty much everything that who it happened to, what happened, and there's also an official blog post by Clem, the project manager for and owner of Linux Mint. And basically, I mean, I'm almost surprised that people are surprised. I mean, one of my big gripes about Linux Mint is the fact that seriously, a new kids on the block like Elementary OS can host their own ISO images, yet Linux Mint has ISO images on I don't even know how many different organizations that you pull down from. There were some things that could have been done to prevent this and ways to help check it, and they do cover that. But, my big argument is Mint, you're big kids now, and if you actually add up, for like 2015, Linux Mint, in just donations, cleared, I don't know, like over $100,000. Okay? That doesn't, I believe that's just donation. I believe that does not include merch, t-shirt sales and any like sticker sales and stuff like that they do. They do have a manufacturer who's released, I think, the second generation of a Mint computer that I believe they get a portion of the proceeds for that. And they do have sponsors. So it's not like Mint doesn't have the money to do it, and it's not like they couldn't find one designated VPS, virtual private server, to handle that for them. I believe that's what Elementary OS did through DigitalOcean, if I recall correctly. So, come on. The next one that I saw the other day, very interesting. First Mac targeting ransomware hits transmission users, researchers say. Now, some of you guys are going, dude, this is Mac, not Linux. Well, one, we must remember that Mac is also Unix, and Linux is Unix-like. So if it's possible for ransomware to be written for Mac OS X, that doesn't mean it's not possible to be written for, like Linux. But the other thing is, we're talking about the transmission client, people, the one that ships in most of your GTK-based desktops. That is a open source product, okay? And it goes through just kind of talking about, and you guys can find this one over at, I don't know how you'd say that, Ars Technica or whatever. They did a good write-up on it. And if you just Google Mac ransomware from transmission from these people, you'll find the article. But it's just like one of those things, and it's something that goes back to what I've always been saying. Open source software development can be more secure than proprietary software development if the code is regularly being audited and the systems that the software is being distributed from is being maintained. This is crucial. I see so many people who are like, open source is so secure. It can be if these criteria are met. If they're not, it has the risk of being just as unsecure as a Microsoft Windows system, period. So let's get down to the actual reason you guys want to watch this video, and that is Tails OS. Okay, so one of the reasons it kind of came to me was this whole thing. Edward Snowden's OS of choice gets a major update. Okay, now I know that he came out saying that he used it a while back, like 2014 era. That doesn't mean he's still using it. They go in and talk about, basically just the new updates to Tails OS. So what is Tails OS? Well, we've got the main site here. Privacy for anyone, right? Tails is a live operating system that you can start on almost any computer from a DVD, USB stick, or SD card. Aims at preserving your privacy and anonymity and helps you to, and then it goes over some of the criteria you can see here. So Tails OS is kind of a interesting concept. There were some things that I didn't realize about it when I first started messing around with it. And I'll kind of go over those in a bit. And some of those things I found a little aggravating. Okay, but we'll go over that here. Where is it? So amnesia, noun, forgetfulness, loss of long-term memory. Tails is a live system that aims to preserve your privacy. It helps you to use the internet anonymously and circumvent censorship almost anywhere you go on any computer, leaving no trace unless you ask it to explicitly. Okay, so very interesting, very, very interesting. Yeah, and there's one thing I'm going to point out, and you'll see later when I'm pointing this out because it's funny to me. It is free software and based on Debian GNU Linux. Okay, so that's enough of that for now. Okay, let's actually look at the desktop. Okay, so at first glance, one may think to themselves, this looks like Mate. It's not. It's actually Gnome 3. Okay, so we could come in and open up the terminal. Okay, and we can do a, what is it? Gnome shell version. And so this is 3.14. Pretty behind, but it is based on Debian. Debian is amazing, but Debian does focus on stability over being rock solid, or modern, I mean it means stable and rock solid, over being the most modern out there. So Debian has always been a little behind. So being it's based on Debian, it's like, okay. One of the things that came of real interest was I went through the applications. I do think security is a huge important aspect of our life. Privacy is, I think, equally key. However, I don't use most of these applications, so I had to do a lot of time of like digging in, to what we have here. So I mean, you got your favorites, you've got your accessories, so pretty standard looking so far, right? Calculator files, get it. GTK hash is a little different. KeyPassX, search for files. Graphics, okay, GIMP, Inkscape, LibreOffice Draw, Scribus, SimpleScan. And then internet. Now this is where we start going down a little bit of a different path. Electrum, Bitcoin Wallet, Gobi, IceDove, Life Area, Onion Circuits, Pigeon, Tor browser, Unsafe browser. Well, why would you include one of those? We'll go over that in a minute. Office pretty much the same. You get your Libre. Programming, you have Poedit. I have never heard of it. Science, LibreOffice Math. Sound and video. Okay, a decent collection. Systems and tools and Tails. So that was, I think, kind of nice. It was like, oh, okay, so you guys created your own little category to put your applications in. So if I'm looking for something Tails specific, then I can go under the Tails section and find that. Universal access, and then you have your utilities. System monitor is it's pretty respectable. So 327 megabytes of RAM. That's super lightweight. And then 27 to, looks like it could go up to as high as 30% of the processor. This was built as a single core or a single CPU in the virtual. And I'll explain yet again in a bit why that was. File system. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty. Everything looks pretty standard, right? Looks pretty standard. So I kind of go through some of the applications, right? Because I was sitting there and I was like, man, what is some of this stuff? So one tool that I found that was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's called MAT. Okay, metadata anonymization toolkit, however you want to say that. So it's a metadata toolkit, trash your meta, keep your data. So that's kind of cool. So, like a lot of stuff gets stored into the metadata, and this would allow you to delete all your metadata, but still keep your data. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Okay. And I started going through, and what was another one? I was like, Oh, Whisper Back. So Whisper Back's kind of a cool tool from what I've read on it. one of the things from my understanding, it allows you to send anonymous email. And I believe you also can have all your, optionally, a encryption key for it. It's kind of funny, though, because they put about giving us an email address. Giving us an email address allows us to contact you to clarify the problem. And so basically what they're saying is, yeah, you could use this to send us a trouble support email, but since we don't know how to get back to you, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Okay. Then yet again, if we go to, where is it? About. Whisper back. Oh, it's done by the Tails developers. So kind of interesting that it did not, for some reason, fall under the Tails applications. But overall, not going to gripe too heavily about not placing software in the correct category. Where was there's another, I think it was internet. Okay, so you got a lot of stuff in here. And if you're like me, you're like, ha, okay. So I don't really do anything with Bitcoin. I'm assuming that allows you to do something with Bitcoin. Gobi is a productivity area, from my understanding. It allows you to connect with multiple people and yet again be able to do productivity together. Now, from my understanding, yet again, you can also create encryption keys to keep those connections secure and safe. You'd kind of expect that from a software like this. Looks relatively nice, right? Very, very simple. Ice Dove is a email client. Kind of like you guys know how there's Firefox and there's Iceweasel, which, Iceweasel is just basically a fork of Firefox that's done differently. That's all Ice Dove is. It is the Thunderbird version of Thunderbird. That's all it is, right? I would be interested in knowing, and I love this, you get your ports, and yet Mozilla Firefox is still listed in there. But I would be willing to bet that there's some security functionality added into here as well, right? So Onion Circuits basically provides you, I believe, different servers to connect out of, so your IP does not come across as your home IP, but you also have your Tor browser. Now, I have never used the Tor browser, so I did play with it for a little bit today. It's kind of slow. So Maximize Tor browser can allow websites to determine your monitor size, which can be used to track you. We recommend you leave the Tor browser window in the original default size. By the way, it was kind of weird because when I first loaded up Tails, it was like it straight up told me that it knew I was using a non-free VirtualBox, and it told me I shouldn't be doing that, and that only free software can be trusted. I was just kind of blown away by that. It's like, wow, Tails is like a mini NSA. So, I mean, honestly, it has the familiarity of Firefox, so I'm good with that. I'm actually, when I was messing with it earlier, it was like real weird. I went to like a Google over in like somewhere in Europe. It was really, really flipping weird. So I'm kind of glad to see that we're here. And see, so I could do a new identity. I can go to the new Tor circuit for the site, check Tor browser for updates. So it's a Tor browser. I've never used Tor browser. I'm half tempted to now under Ubuntu, but not bad, right? There was Life Area. I cannot open this because when I do, it crashes everything. And I don't know if that's because I'm running this virtual, because everything seems to be running fine. Even, it's like screen resolutions are setting really nicely in here. So I can't really speak if it's a virtual problem or if it's just an issue with Tails itself. Life Area appears to be, yet again, some type of note-taking of some sorts. But I'm not sure because I can't use it. Unsafe browser. So it says this, right? And so logically you would think, I'm not going to click on it. But I'm like, screw it, I'm in a virtual, I'm going to click on it. If it blows it up, it blows it up. Okay, do you really want to launch the unsafe browser? Network activity within the unsafe browser is not anonymous. Only use the unsafe browser if necessary. For example, if you have to log in or register to activate your internet connection. Do it. Start an unsafe browser. This may take a while, so please be patient. And then, I get like this whole thing. This is, I think, the part where I kind of get ready to, let's talk about the downs and tails, because this kind of bothered me. Now, this may not be a Tails thing. This may be a Tor browser thing. I cannot tell you because I don't run Tor because I'm not security paranoid. I believe in good practices, but not paranoid. But I wouldn't deem this as an unsafe browser by any flipping means just because you're not anonymous. Seriously, I may be going to DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine that respects my privacy, but you're going to tell me that because I use this browser, I'm completely unsafe. Okay. Fair enough. I'll take it. But let's start talking about where I ran into some of the issues from a philosophical standpoint where I'm having some problems with this distribution. Because there's some certain things that if you're going to say you're something, you better keep to that. So first of all, okay, let me get to the part about the installer. Here we go. Welcome to the Tails Installation Assistant. So one of the things I found out very quickly about Tails, because I was trying to figure out how do I install Tails to the computer, to my virtual setup. Couldn't make it happen. Kept telling me it wants to go to a USB. Now, before we get to showing where that is in the OS, let me show you this. So at first you're like, ooh, this is nice. This is really nice. Okay, so this is going to help me get through everything. You end up finding that you're spending so much time trying to get through all this, it ends up becoming this horrendously painful experience. Come on. Okay. I guess while I wait for the page to load, I can come into here and I can show you guys what I'm talking about. So if you go under Tails, there's the Tails installer. Now, I did think it was weird when I booted in that, like most live instances usually have the installer icon on the desktop. And I was like, wow, there's no installer icon. Okay, that's odd, but I'm going to investigate this a little further. And so I come up and I go install by cloning, upgrade from the ISO. And so I'm sitting there like reading through these and I'm starting to go, this is interesting. This is very interesting. All my options involve loading to a USB, CD, or over to a SD card. This is interesting. Okay, so I come here. I'm a Debian or Ubuntu user. Looks like the Tails site is running a little slow. Okay. Oh, stop it. So none of these are good options. I want to install it to my drive. I want to be a paranoid, secure user on my desktop. I am not a fun person, so I don't want to do anything fun. I just want to be able to surf the internet and be able to read Reddit without anyone knowing that it's me. Come on. So maybe a good indication also would have been this little USB drive up here. If it ever loads, and I don't know if it will, the problem and what it boils down to is the fact that I don't know. There is no way to send it to your computer. Here we are. Okay, so yet again, your options are install from another Tails, install from Debian or Ubuntu, or command line this. By the way, if you decide to run everything from Tails, you'll need 2 USB sticks. Now you notice, I keep clicking. Where is the download? So 1.5 hours for the 1.1 to download. Should say estimate. Half hour to install. Jesus, what kind of computer am I on? 1 USB stick, 4 GB minimum. All data will be erased. A smartphone, another computer, or a printer to follow the instructions. Download, install, restart. Configure, restart. Huh. Okay. Let's go. And then I run into this. They don't support Chromium. I find that odd because a lot of websites that I have gone to recognize that I'm running Chromium. They may not. They just say you're on an unsupported browser. I have some that like a straight up like we support Chrome but not Chromium. And I don't understand why you wouldn't support Chromium because the Chromium team, they're awesome. They have numerous times talked about leaving things out from Google because of privacy concerns. And they have shunned Google out loud about privacy concerns, which is a little nervous because Google owns YouTube and hopefully they don't shun me for saying that, but it's truth. So I just did a torrent file. I could have opened up Firefox or I could have used a Tor browser, but I only have Firefox because it came with Ubuntu. But anyway, so you get the installer. It took all of 5 minutes. I love when I'm overquoted. Way love it. The problem I have here with this whole concept is if I configure things in here, like my email and everything to be set up here, then how do I put this? Like every time I restart Tails, I have to reset everything up. Now, there is some advanced options at the beginning that I haven't gone through yet. And I might be able to do it through there. But you should just do it by default anyway. I mean, I guess unless I'm handing around my thumb drive of Tails installed on it and my Windows user friends want to, use Linux, which hopefully this is not the first introduction to Linux I'm doing with them is through Tails. The other issue I have with it is I get the point of being a Linux distribution that is about your privacy. What about my privacy at home, though? I don't want to run off a thumb drive. My solid state drive has a read and write of 500 megabytes a second. A really decent thumb drive's like 80 megabytes a second. Okay. Why can you guys not make it where I can run it from my solid state drive? Now, their response to that was pretty simple. Okay. A lot of that had to do with they just didn't feel that was... at this time, it would not be a good purpose for them. Okay. So now let's go over a couple of the philosophical issues. Tails frequently asked questions. So there's a couple things on here that bother me. For starters, you're talking to me about my privacy. You know what I'd like to see? If you are a security distribution maker or a privacy distribution maker, there's something, if you're watching this is what I want you to start including. Do you audit the code of all the products that you package? That's the point of open source software. You want me to trust you to build me a secure operating system that protects my privacy or super stupidly secure. Yet, did you look at all the source code for Gnome to make sure that it was securely designed? Did you look at all the source code for the Linux kernel, which I think is like 15 million lines of code, something ridiculous? Did you audit the X display server, which I know has vulnerabilities in it? That has been one of the biggest reasons for the fast track of Wayland and Mir. There was some huge security flaws discovered in the X display server like a year or two ago, maybe further back, honestly. But still, are you auditing my code? Okay, no. Instead, they come in and they talk about all their philosophical issues. I don't care about your philosophy. I want to know. You tell me privacy. How do I know that this is a secure operating system? Because you say it is? Yeah. Does Tails need antivirus? Well, no, it doesn't save anything. I believe there is a way to. I think in the advanced settings you can. But still, no. And then they go into a bunch of hoopla about how secure it is. And this is like, where is it? They say the most systems don't need antivirus, including permissions design of the Linux system. This is the biggest pile of crap I have ever heard for an answer. It is. Does Linux need antivirus? Typically not. Usually no. We keep our systems highly up to date. We pull down from secure repositories, unless you're pulling an ISO down from Linux Mint. So generally, no, we do not. But, 10 years ago, Mac users used to say the same flippin' thing. If you've been on the web and on internet forums, Mac users did not get viruses either. Well, we just looked at an article about ransomware. The other side of it is there have been viruses written for Mac. There have been malware written for Mac. They're Unix. They use the same level of permissions as we do. There may be some variants, and I'm sure someone will post underneath Oh, they do this differently. But at the end of the day, they use a root file system. It's Unix. So it's not impossible to say that Linux can't get viruses. And posting crap like this usually just pisses the hackers off, and next thing you know, we end up having viruses. Just saying. And with our current market share in server, we're a pretty decent sized target. Okay, you know, Mac doesn't have a huge desktop market share, and they virtually have no server market share. Linux, our desktop market share is very meh, less than Mac, but our server market share is very impressive. So I'm just going to put out the whole virus thing. That drives me nuts. But you remember that part, and this is where I'm going to go into the next part, and this is the part that kind of drives me nuts. The whole free software piece, right? You know, we're free software. Well, like I said, when I booted this up, I got a little notification that popped up saying you're using a non-free virtual machine, and that only free software can be trusted. Tails. This is from GNU, the people who deem what is free and what is not. Tails uses the vanilla version of Linux, which contains non-free firmware blobs. So, Mr. I'm free software. You're using proprietary binary blobs in your Linux kernel. By the way, there are versions of the Linux kernel that ships without those binary blobs. I love when I read that, because you see these yuppities run around and go, free software this, free software that. You're not even a full free software operating system, and the GNU project does not recognize or endorse you. So take your free software and shove it. Now, on side note, I like free software. I agree with free software as long as the code's audited, because otherwise it's not any better than the proprietary stuff, in my opinion. I could write a malicious package that I put as a PPA that everyone starts using, but unless someone looks at my source code, half the people who use it will tell you it's secure because I wrote it under a GPL license. Anyway, that kind of bothers me, and this is why. Because as I'm going through this operating system, okay, as I'm going through a lot of these features and functions, I'm being talked to about free software and how you should only be using free software, but it's not even a fully free software operating system. Okay, I mean, it's like the open source advocates I've met online, and then like they open source this, open source that, proprietary is evil. And then, like, another post in the forum later, they'll be talking about playing the latest game on Steam. Steam being a proprietary platform, and furthermore, the games, a majority of the games in Steam are proprietary as well. And I'm not saying I'm against proprietary. I'm just saying, like, look, you know what? I have my cake and ice cream, and I don't complain about one or the other. So I hate when people do that. My next complaint is GNOME 3. So as you can see, things are pretty consistent, and I'm trying to find, there was one application that I opened where I went, this is hideous. Was it Traverso? Might have been Traverso. We'll find out. No, it's not Traverso. Okay. I'm not entirely sure which application it was, but one of the big problems that GNOME has been having, especially when you're going for this GNOME 2 look from GNOME 3, is there's a lot of desktop inconsistencies, especially if you do package a GTK2 application with a GTK3 desktop. Okay? If you want this classic look, I don't understand why you're not shipping Mate. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't get it. Ship Mate. I don't understand what's so hard about it. Reality is it makes more sense that if you want the GNOME 2 look, to go with something that's aiming to look like GNOME 2 than to try and take GNOME 3 and make it look like something that it's not. Okay. And, you know, though, in terms of duplicate application, that was the only one they really had an issue with. They have Audacity and Traverso, which both claim to be audio editors. So, where do I sit on this distribution? I think I sit in a couple areas, really. One, I have an issue with anyone who claims that all hail free software and smite everything proprietary, yet you're shipping something with binary blobs. You know, at least one, disclose that, and then tell me why you're doing that. And maybe they do in the facts. I don't think I've seen anything about that. They do mention something about audio and video drivers, which is why those binary blobs are there. But they don't, blatantly sit there. And and come out and say we had to run binary blobs for these reasons, because reality is, no, you really don't. Unless I'm going to render a game in here, but not at a read and write of 80 meg a second, unless, you know, I get a USB-C drive and find a computer that supports USB-C. So there's my first complaint from a philosophical standpoint. The other issue I have with it is, like I said, I mean, Gnome 3 was not engineered to look classic. I mean, it's looking pretty decent, but I would much rather see, if you want the Gnome 2 look, go with Mate. For internet purpose, I think Tor is fine. And if Tor comes with the unsafe browser with it, I'm completely cool with that. If they are allowing the unsafe browser to be there and they're changing the icon, they're doing this, there's a difference between unsafe and not anonymous. Okay? Huge difference in terms of end user thought process. And then my final complaint is, I get the idea of this. I can walk into my school, I can walk into my library, I can go into my work, and I can plug a thumb drive in and be able to boot into something and no one know that I'm doing it. However, some places, like a school or work, was to find out that you were doing this, you could be looking at being fired or expelled. Just saying. And I'll put out that precursor for some kid who may be watching this going, ha ha ha, no, you don't want to get caught doing that. But maybe I want to be like super paranoid and secure at home. They should make this a way where I can install this to a hard drive at a computer. Because I do consider this an excellent educational desktop. A desktop to teach you about all the things that do collect information on you. Example being, guess what? When I open up Tor, so let's go here, and for some reason, I don't understand why it takes so long to close the unsafe one, but Tor, I think, takes just as long, but I don't get notified that that's going to take a while. Probably because, like I said, okay, talking about minimizing and maximizing my monitors. Well, allegedly, as per the information I've seen on Tor, say I go to Google, Google shouldn't be able to see where I'm coming from anyway. And then, honestly, it's not actually a bad idea that people know you minimize the size of your screen resolution, because some websites actually, they fix how it renders based on screen resolution. It's almost actually kind of a good piece of information for them to have. But anyway, going back to the main point. So, I mean, I just have a lot of issues with the philosophy that it is not a privacy OS that you can install anywhere and use anywhere. And I think for those reasons, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Because I think it got a 6 because I think it's a good operating system. Despite one application I couldn't get to open, it runs very well in the virtual. It's very consistent across the board. But where, like I said, I'm having the huge issues. If you want Gnome 2, just use Mate, and it needs to be able to be installed to a hard drive. Better performance, and like I said, I can see a purpose to that as well. They may not, I can, because there's a lot of good security tools in here. Now, arguably, you could say, well, you could install this on Ubuntu. Yeah, but this would be a nice distro for someone who's paranoid about those things to start off in, so they can start to see how they're monitored at different websites or different places and times. So the next video I'm going to be doing, I'm hoping to have done this week as well. If not, next week, week after, whenever. I want to go over MB server. I used to be a huge proponent of Plex, and then I started getting very angry with Plex because of some maintenance issues. And then my server's hard drive went, which is fine. I had another hard drive, and it was time to rebuild anyway, even though we're like just a month or two away from the new LTS server release. And I've been hearing about this MB product. I gave it a shot, and I will tell you it is a spot-on replacement for Plex Media Server. So, and they do offer a desktop client, so it's not just going to be about servers. There is a desktop just like client like Plex offers, and we'll go over that. But everyone, thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, please subscribe. If you didn't like the video, or you didn't like the way the video was done, your comments below, they're irrelevant. Thanks.
Yeah.